Rio Hondo Prep football is one of the best kept secrets in all of Southern California. As one of the smallest enrollments year in and year out, the Kares have won 16 CIF championships and have been one of the most successful programs throughout their history. Welcome to A Charge to Keep, the official podcast of Rio Hondo Prep football. And now, bringing you the latest news and content from his alma mater, a CIF champion in 2001 from the class of 2003, here's your host, Matt Hersema.
What is up, Rio Hondo Prep football fans? Welcome to week 4 and the 5th game of the 2025 season. Your 4-0 Rio Hondo Prep Kares are headed down to Bellflower to take on the Buccaneers of Bellflower High School, who are 3-0 on this season as well. So much like last week, someone's O must go. And Rio Hondo made sure that it was Marquez whose undefeated season came to an end last week. I'm sure the Bellflower Buccaneers would like nothing better than to shut down Rio Hondo and see if they can defeat the Kares for the first time this season. I mentioned they are 3-0. Bellflower had a game in week 0, but they were off for week number 1, which is why they have just one game less than us. It does appear from looking at their schedule, they do still have the 10-game season, but some teams take those buys at different times. Some teams just start their season in week 1 altogether, which is why we don't have the which is why they don't have a bye maybe later on. But for Rio Hondo, like start the season in week 0, have a bye around right before league play. I think that's kind of the way we like to do things. But to each their own. And the Bellflower Buccaneers, again, last year is a blowout game right from the get-go with Rio. They kind of looked a little disorganized, and honestly, it was kind of over before it started. But this year, the Bucks are 3-0. New coaching staff. You heard from Coach Carson on the pregame show over the weekend that Coach Jason Negro of St. John Bosco has taken notice of what's going on around the corner from him down there at Bellflower High School. So a new coaching staff in there. Looks like they got some really good players. And from looking at some of their highlights on Max Preps, these are guys that can score at a moment's notice. Some big time receivers, running backs, quarterback play, a little bit of everything. And I think this is a team that we should not take lightly. I don't think Rio Hondo typically does those things, but with each opponent, you need to respect them, prepare for them, and come out and play. Because the second you start taking things for granted is the second that you are going backwards as a football team. So each and every week on the pregame show, I talk about the other team a little bit and try to just say, stay the course, get fired up for each and every opportunity you get to set foot on the football field for Rio Hondo Prep, because there's a lot less of those tomorrows, or there's a lot less todays than there are tomorrows, if you know what I mean. So the Kares have been playing good football. We heard on the post-game show, of course, over the weekend from some of the players. We're going to hear from a member of the alumni today, a kind of legendary member of the alumni, if you will. He played in the 1982 undefeated CIF Championship season for Rio Hondo Prep. He was a running back. He did a lot of other things there as well. But Scot Moore is a guest on the show today. We recorded a conversation last week, and it went rather long, which I had no issues with. I like hearing the history of the Rio program and a lot of the just the traditions and just kind of some of the funny things that have been a consistent thing in this program over the years. So I will step aside quickly here so we can get to that conversation. And then at the end of it, I will come back with some brief information on the 3-0 Bellflower Buccaneers, who Rio Hondo is taking on here in week 4. The season, again, is with this being our 5th game upcoming, it will be half over officially with the regular season, which is just crazy to think about. But I've told you before, the season flies by, and good things. Let's see. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. And so I hope you guys enjoy this conversation I had with Scot Moore, again, a running back on the 82 championship team, played alongside Dave Guerrero, who's our camera guy on the sideline down there, bringing you all the sights and sounds of Rio Hondo Prep football on the NFHS network and the Rio Hondo Prep football social media pages. So good teammates back in the day. And Mr. Moore continues to be a big supporter of Rio Hondo football. His son, KJ, won a championship at Rio, playing alongside a lot of the current coaches. So we'll talk a little bit about that and just kind of where the program's gone and go down memory lane a little bit. I think for the older generation of Rio football fans and historians that will enjoy this conversation. And yeah, I just stick with it. It's a fun one, and I look forward to you guys hearing it. Let's now get to our guest, Scot Moore, and I'll be back after that for some final thoughts on the Bellflower Buccaneers and the great start that they off to another matchup of undefeateds here in week 4. But first, our featured guest of the week, 1982 CIF champion, Scot Moore. All right, our guest this week is from the class of 1983. You could see his name on one of the championship banners in the Stivers Center. That 1982 undefeated team that won Rio Hondo Prep's 4th CIF championship. Scot Moore was a running back on that team and quite a player back in the day. He is joining me today. Mr. Moore, I don't know what to say. I just keep having Atlantic Pirates on this show. And as a Gator guy, I just can't stand it. Good to see you, though.
Yeah, glad to be here, Matt. Thank you for what you do for the team and the school. We appreciate it.
Yes, well, it is an honor to do it. And we're going to talk some Rio football, some, history, some stories, whatever we got here just to kind of keep the fan base excited. But I guess, Mr. Moore, I always ask the beginning. I mentioned the Atlantic Pirates there. I had many great battles with you back in the day, you and Mr. Lee, when I was in Kare. But as for you, how did you find Kare Youth League, or did it find you? What's kind of the origin story?
Yeah, I was a kid growing up in Doherty. My parents moved to Doherty for the schools. In Upper Doherty, Fish Canyon, and walked out of school one day as a second grader, and I saw these kids wearing football equipment, and I'm like, hey, wait a second, I want to do that. And I went up to them and said, hey, what do you guys, where do you guys play? What's going on? And they said, hey, we catch a bus and we go to BCL and we play football. And so I went home to my mom and dad and said, hey, I want to play football at BCL, and there's a bus and everything. You just catch it after school. And I don't know if my mom and dad actually contacted BCL or not, but they said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So a couple days later, I went out in front of the school, and the kids that I saw before weren't there, but some other kids were. And so I caught the bus. It was actually a band that pulled up, and there was a coach by the name of Mr. Gary Lunny, who, as soon as I walked up and said, hey, I want to come to BCL, I want to play football, he got this big old smile on his face. He was so happy to see me. He's like, that's great. We want to have you. As a matter of fact, you get to sit in the front seat because all the new kids get to sit in the front seat because you guys, are special. So I sat in the front seat of the Atlantic van with my new coach who thought, I was the greatest guy, which my teachers never really thought I was the greatest guy. So this was kind of new to me. I was like, wow, somebody's glad to see me. This is great. I remember back in the day, we had to be voted in onto the team. And, fortunately, Mr. Lunny was very patient and very receptive to all kinds of kids because, I didn't get voted in the team because they're like, hey, that guy fights too much at school, So I remember Mr. Lunny taking me kind of around the corner and saying, hey, Scott, just kind of cut it out at school, don't fight so much. See if we'll vote again in a couple of weeks. I'm sure you'll get in, So I did make it in, fortunately. But, Mr. Lunny was the perfect coach for us. He barely blinked an eye when he got summoned to the principal's office because our, King of the Hill game, waiting for the bus, got a little bit too aggressive at the front of the school there. And they informed Mr. Laney that we had to move the bus stop down the street a little bit away from the other kids. So, just a great team to grow up on. We were a bunch of crazy kids. I think at one point we had over 30 kids on that team. Um, a lot of them played at a lot of different schools. And we definitely were a force to be reckoned with at Kare in all aspects, sports and otherwise. Mr. Lenny was also just a great coach. Nowadays when it rains, we cancel activities. Well, back then, when it rained, it meant that there was special activities, at least on Atlantic. I don't know if other teams did it, but we all came on the bus and we were, doubly excited those days because we would build little boats and race them down Farna in the gutters. And Mr. Lundy it was always a competition. He was always keeping points. We were always, trying to get to that, whatever if you win, you get X, Y, or Z. And it just kind of carried over, and we just had a great time on Atlantic back then. And Mr. Lee and I definitely tried to keep that spirit going, and just realize that there's a lot of different kinds of kids, and we wanted to be open and receptive to all of them and give them all a chance to be part of, a great team and a great group, which I think we did over the years. But that was all started in my life, at least, by Mr. Lunny, who recognized something that I didn't know was there, and I don't know how many other people knew was there, and just really brought it out. And I appreciate that to this day.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, the boat races. I mean, of course, pirates would be good at those things, right? There in the water. And, you have the exact same story as me, Mr. Moore, second grade, saw a kid with football gear. Hey, what is that? Told my parents. And I was like, the best part is they pick you up and take you home. So, yeah, it's funny how one small moment can change your life forever, really, in a sense. And what about some of the kids you played with? Any of those teammates you had? You said you had up to like 30 guys. Any of those teammates who are still around today or that we would know?
Not really. We played. Yeah, I don't think anybody really is around from that point. I mean, our coaches, you would recognize a lot of them. Dave Kirby was
Yeah.
my coach for years. Mike Story was a coach back then on Atlantic. Um, the high school kids at that time that were helpers were, Scott Weidman and Mike McGarren, all of those guys. So it definitely, there's a lot of Atlantic kids up through the years that have kind of helped Kare Youth League along. But yeah, we had a lot of guys. Um, Back then, Rio was even a smaller school than it is now, um, and we had a lot of kids that played at Monrovia or the different schools in the area, all throughout their high school career. We had quite a collection back then, and we were pretty much the best thing going on in Monrovia and Doherty as far as youth sports during that time.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. I totally believe that, and it's really interesting just to see the sustainability of Kare Youth League and how it's been on for so long, and just the countless decades, and how many people have gone through it, even the ones that don't continue on to Rio Hondo Prep. And kind of on that topic, Mr. Moore, when you're a kid in Kare, one of the traditions really is looking up to Rio Hondo guys who are playing on the gridiron. Do you remember as a young Atlantic Pirate maybe going to a game or watching some of these high school guys who I'm sure were your heroes?
Yeah, and especially with us, once you hit fifth grade, you graduated into what they called back then the KLA program, which was coached by high school, and Mr. Dowd was the kind of in charge of it. And my high school coach, when I was in fifth grade, who was like the head coach of the team, was Peter Amundsen. Um, and I was always mad when I went to like basketball games at Rio and Peter didn't play and didn't start out there. I'm like, hey, he's the best, goes, you gotta get him in the game, coach. What are you doing? And we after the game I'd be like, hey, what happened? And he'd be like, oh, I was good. I was good where I was. And we just thought Peter was, the best athlete and the best player. He was a great football player. That was definitely his sport. But yeah, he coached our team, and then Scott Weidman and coached one of the other teams. Greg Loomis, I think, was a coach there. Just a lot of the high school guys. So we would come to the games and see them. And we were junior high during the big 1977
Oh.
game. So, that was the time and place where, stand on the field where I said, I want to do this someday. And this is the place I'm going to do it at. I want to be just like these guys. And I think, all of us on the, high school teams 3 or 4 years later all remember back, to that game as kind of the moment where we decided that this is the place we wanted to be.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping there's a lot of that going on currently, with either the Santa Monica game or the Vandy game last year, or these crazy games that Rio has had the past few years, where kids are watching, families are watching, and thinking, man, that would be a lot of fun to be a part of. You were in junior high. I mean, that was the game, the '77 game, arguably the greatest game in Rio history. If I mean, so many moments from that game stick out. You were a teenager, but just watching that, was it just? I mean, the ups and downs of that game, but it was a high scoring game, triple overtime. I mean, I don't know any specific memories from that, just how full that house was, for how crazy it was that night.
Well, I was actually I was assigned to be with the CIF commissioner during the game and to be like his gopher. So I was actually on the other sideline. But as the game got more and more, intense towards the end, I'm, up watching it or whatever. And finally, he just like looks at me and kind of shakes his head and like, you know what? Goes, just go watch the game. Goes, you can watch the game. I'm going to go get the trophies. You watch the game. Goes, you're good. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I can remember it just got more and more intense, and the game went back and forth, and it looked like all was lost, and we pulled out the trick play that tied the game up, and I mean, it was just kind of the breakthrough moment for the program. I
Mhm.
wasn't around during the 6-man era or the first couple of years of 8-man, but we were building towards that in 76 and 77, and had not quite gotten over the hump. And then that was obviously the time when you get over that hump and you realize, hey, we can play with these guys, kind of like, very similar to a couple of years ago, where it's like, hey, we can, play in Division 9 or Division 7. And now, you have that confidence going forward. So that was definitely the moment where in 8-man, I think at least we got over the hump and realized that we were, we could be a player in that division every year.
Yeah, and people, may look back and think, oh, 8-man, right? In the '70s and stuff. You can't watch highlights of that game and not be blown away by the athleticism on the field, the great players. And 8-man now is not what it was, in the '70s and '80s and things, where it was really good athletes. It was just really tiny schools, for example. So yeah, I think to your point, that was a big turning point in Rio history for sure. They win it again in '79, a few years later, with some really talented players. And then Mr. Moore is kind of your era. I'm guessing, let's see, '79. You would have been a freshman, I think, at that time. But
Yeah.
kind of a special era, really, in Rio football. Championships in '77, '79, and '82, as well as runner-up finishes in '81 and '83. So, if you could talk to me about just the beginning of your high school career and all the way through to that '82 championship.
Yeah. So my varsity, I played JVs in '79. Um, the '79 team was really good and kind of dominated. Um, and they all graduated, an awful lot of them. In 1980, all of a sudden, we were it. Mr. Johnson came and looked at us and said, "Okay, you guys are varsity." And he had, I had played quarterback in JVs. I played quarterback most of my career. On defense, I played various places and really loved defense. Found it a lot more fun to hit than to get hit. Um, so love the defensive side of the ball. But, you know, all of a sudden I was looking at here, I'm a sophomore on the varsity team and I'm not playing quarterback. So what am I going to play? And I ended up being slotted in as one of the split ends. which I'm like, I can handle this, kind of run out there by the sideline and, catch passes and look cool out there, throw a crackback block once in a while on the sweeps. And because I can do this. And that lasted for a few games. And Mr. Johnson came and said, we've got an injury, want to move around a couple of people. You're going to have to switch to tight end. So tight end in 8-man, the way we ran it back then, especially, was, you were on the weak side of the line all by yourself. So it was a major blocking position. You had to block, or else, there was nobody to cover for you over there. So I'm like, okay. I mean, I was 160 pounds. But that's kind of how we did it back then. It was next man up, and the next man up was not necessarily a lineman type, and it was me, and so I switched over there. Couple more games went on. We had a couple more injuries, and all of a sudden, Mr. Johnson came and said, he goes, I think you're going to be a running back next year, but this year I'm going to have to move you to center. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. And they pulled Dave Guerrero up from JVs and stuck him at tight end. So our line basically was Dave Guerrero, myself, Don Bedoya was on there as well, all putting our time in as freshmen and sophomores on the line doing the dirty work, and we had a pretty good team. We lost a couple games during the season, rebounded pretty well, had a good finish to the season, and ended up playing a little school called Modesto Christian in the quarterfinals.
Wow.
Back then, CIF liked to invite other division schools. Obviously, Modesto was a northern or central section school. Yeah, like to invite good schools from other sections to play in the Southern Section playoffs. So Modesto Christian was invited to play in the Southern Section playoffs. So, one great thing about Rio, and I know it's true to this day, is, the coaches are totally invested. Our coaches gave us incredible game plans. And, Mr. Lunny, as I remember, and I think I'm right, flew up to Modesto the week before the game to scout them, because we knew we were going to play them in the playoffs, in the quarterfinals. So we flew to Modesto. They must have had a Saturday game, and we had a Friday night game. I think actually Mr. Amundsen might have flown him up on his private plane together, and or rented a plane and flew him up, and then came back with a game plan that was amazing. We knew what they were going to do before they did it. Unfortunately, we just couldn't stop them a couple different plays, and we lost that game 16-12. But I remember coming off that field and just thinking, it's going to get better. We're going to, this is going to be a fun 2 years with this group. And, I was obviously, it turned out to be right. But we rolled right into, after basketball and baseball and, the next summer, we rolled right into 1981 with, a really high outlook. We, Dave Guerrero and myself, we kind of graduated from the line, and I was in a rotation at tailback, and Dave was moved to quarterback. I think we still left Don Bedoya on the line for a little bit longer to get some more seasoning. He was had only played football for a couple years at Rio. He didn't play before that. But we rolled into 81, and I can remember going to camp. I know we used to go to Mount Kare before double sessions, and we were going, an interesting story, we're going to camp, and Mr. Orcampton was driving us. Mr. Randall Johnson was still on the trip. So Mr. Orcampton was driving us, and the bus actually broke down out in Ontario somewhere. I remember it was somewhere by Yum Yum Donuts because I was in high school, and that was a landmark that we were able to remember. We pulled into this church parking lot, and the bus was gone. So Mr. Ork made phone calls, and got another bus to come to drive out. Meanwhile, we were kind of wandering around this uh, facility, which turned out to be a high school. And we wandered into a weight room, and there was a football team lifting weights in there. And they were like, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" And we're like, "What are you guys doing here?" And said, "Oh, well, we're a football team." And like, "Oh, well, so are we." And like, "No, you guys," they were making fun of us, and they were saying, "You guys don't look like a football team." And we're like, "Well, who are you guys?" And like, "Well, we're American Christian, because we're like the best 8-man football team there is." And we're like, "We've never even heard of you." And they kind of went on and on, like, "Oh, look at us. We're way bigger than you. We're gonna." And so, of course, when Mr. Johnson came back a couple weeks later or a week later, the first thing we did is like, "Hey, we want to get this game against American Christian." And he's like, "Okay, because that sounds good." So he called him up, and we actually got a game with them that year. Uh,
No.
yeah.
Wow.
And so we played him. We played him out there in Upland at some park, uh, and I hate to, unfortunately for American Christian, the game didn't go past halftime. We were very motivated, uh,
Oh,
and then we played them again in '82, the first game of the season, and again the game did not go past halftime. So I haven't heard of American Christian since. I don't know
you
if
put
they're
him out of
still,
business, it sounds like.
but yeah,
Wow.
so that was kind of funny. We just kind of got a game by breaking down in their parking lot, and they challenged us, and we accepted the challenge. Um,
Great story. I love
so
it.
yeah, 81. We had a pretty easy schedule, including American Christian, um, and then we had a game against Montclair Prep. The Montclair Prep they'd rebounded from 77. Um, And I know we were talking about this a little bit before, but um, Montclair Prep came in as number one. They had Torrey Lavello as the quarterback. Uh, Torrey Lavello is the manager of the Arizona Diamondbacks and played in Major League Baseball for about 10 years, and
Yeah.
had a, a, a wide receiver corner um, who played in the NFL and played at Stanford and played in the NFL for 10 years. And those were not the best guys in the team that we were worried about. Um, they had some other really tough players with great football names like Rocco Buffalino, uh,
Oh,
who chased me all around the field as a linebacker. And the the game ended up. I mean, they were really big, really bruising, and we lost 19-0. Couldn't get anything going offensively. Got pushed around a lot. Our One of our tailbacks in the rotation, Andre Jones, got injured during the game, broke his collarbone, so he was out for the year. It's just a really tough game. We rebounded, went into the prep league, won all the rest of our games, um, got in the playoffs as the number 4 seed, and uh, we're kind of looking up at the number 1 seed Montclair Prep, looking for a semifinal showdown. Uh, we had a close game against Coast Union um, in the second round, where we got out of there 13-12,
whew.
scoring a touchdown and kicking an extra point in the last minute of the game, I believe. Um, and this whole time I was in rotation with a great running back named Scott Lucas. Scott and I were both the tailbacks. This is my first year ever playing tailback. I'd played quarterback a lot, and my big thing in football was I had speed. Um, and so at quarterback, I would just run like crazy. And when as JV quarterback, I led the team in rushing. We did power 11s where everybody just, it was everybody around the right end, and I was running behind people. But a lot of stuff on playing quarterback is just, naked bootlegs and things where you're taking off and you don't have any blockers. It's just, speed. So that served me well. I didn't realize playing tailback that it wasn't the same thing all the time. I got the ball and I just took off. If it was a sweep around the end, I was running as fast as I possibly could from the first step. I was going to run by everybody. And sometimes it didn't serve me quite as well, because when the game got really tight or got tough, and it's like, okay, you try harder, right? You're more focused. I just tried to run harder and faster. And a lot of times I'd run past the blockers and, do so. I realized I had a lot to learn that year. But anyway, we went into this game against Montclair Prep, and who had thoroughly dominated us the first time. And this was probably the best coaching job, the best kind of game plan that I think I saw, and might have been one of the best ones ever at Rio. I know the coaches, and we actually, as players, had gone to a couple different Montclair games just to watch and scout them, to try and figure out, hoping we'd play them later on down the road. And we had them dialed in. We knew when the fullback took a step over, set a step to the left from their normal formation. We knew what plays they were going to run off of that. We knew, we had all their little tells, everything all mapped out. We would roll our defense or even blitz off of, formations and things that we saw pre-snap, without the coaches even calling anything on the sideline. So that, combined with the fact that it started raining on Thanksgiving Day. This was a Friday after Thanksgiving game. Semifinals back then were always after Thanksgiving. So on Thanksgiving Day, I remember looking outside and it was pouring down rain. It rained all day, all night. It rained all day Friday. We came to the game and it was raining, thunder and lightning. Back then, we thought the thunder and lightning was cool. There'd be thunder and lightning in the area, and the team, Montclair Prep would all cheer like, yeah, it's thundering for us, and we'd be like, no, it's thundering for us. So we're out there at Kare Field. I remember sitting down during warm-ups. You sit down and you stretch and stuff. I sat down and I was underwater. My legs were underwater. That's how deep the field, the puddles in the field were. So it was definitely a game affected by the rain. And that, in combination with the fact that we knew their plays at that point. I remember lining up across from Rocco Buffalino and thinking, okay, it's going to be a long night. And then I realized that Rocco Buffalino had no traction. He pretty much had the Rocco Buffalino taken out of him because he couldn't get moving. So I could get around them. We knew what they were doing. Our defenses were all geared to stop, what plays and series they were running. And they just got more and more frustrated, besides the fact that, there was the rain and I can remember tackling the quarterback hitting from behind, and literally you're underwater. You get tackled flat on the ground and your head is like under, it's like comes up like spitting, water out. Like,
that's awesome.
It was just a crazy game. It was, super fun. And we ended up winning 25-0.
Wow.
And which was, it was amazing. I mean, and I can, I can say that, wow, it was because we were so great, but, we also had a running back running towards the goal line, and a Montclair Prep guy hit the ball. The ball went flying up in the air, went into somebody else's hands. They took it, and then ran in for the touchdown. So we had a lot of luck as well. A lot of bounces went our way, but yeah, it was an amazing game. And after that game, we thought, hey,
got it.
We've got it. This was our big rival, right? We didn't, we were playing Templeton. We lost the coin flip. We had to go up to Templeton. We didn't know anything about them really. We'd played them in '79, and I know the varsity had beat them. So we weren't that, we were just thinking this was, we got our big game, we got our big revenge, and went up to Templeton and just got blitzed at the beginning of
Wow.
the game. They scored 2 or 3 touchdowns right away. By the time we got our feet under us, it was, we couldn't catch up, and got beat by several touchdowns up there.
Oh man.
It just, learned a big lesson the hard way, that, nothing is given to you by, what happened the week before.
That's a great lesson.
Yeah, and took that to heart, going into the 1982 season, which was going to be most of my class. Obviously, our classes last year. So we had a senior heavy team, along with juniors. Dave Guerrero was a junior. Steve Mendoza, Norm Schultz, great linebacker, was a junior. Those guys were juniors, but the guys in my class, we really knew that we had to take care of business and finish in 1982. That was our last chance. So that's what we started working on. Just like I know the kids do nowadays. You see them out there in January and February working out,
Yeah.
on the field. That brings back memories. And we did that back in 8-man, and in our day though, there wasn't nearly as much weightlifting, and strength training. I'm sure there was in at other schools and other football divisions, but 8-man, and we were all about the conditioning.
Yeah.
And needed to stay fast. 8-man is a lot more of a one-on-one game. A lot of times when you're out there, if you're tackling somebody, and a lot of the plays are designed to get the running back one-on-one with somebody, as opposed to 11-man. You have so many other people involved. With 8-man, if you're playing corner or you're playing defensive end or whatever, you could easily be the guy out there if you either make the tackle or or that guy gets loose. So it was a little bit different, and speed and conditioning were definitely at a premium. But yeah, we had a great first couple years there, and like I said, really building into our third year. Mr. Johnson, for whatever reason, he didn't talk to us, but he decided that I think part of our problem had been our schedule. So he went and scheduled besides American Christian, they were our first game. But after that he scheduled Templeton, Coast Union, and the teams we had played up in the playoffs, and then a school called El Paso de Robles, which was
Oh.
the California Youth Authority school.
Yeah. Yes.
For people who did not belong in the probation camps, if you know what I mean, but needed a juvenile prison. And they had decided, I guess, probably because, this was about the time that the Camp Kilpatrick, story and successes happened. So I think they might have decided, hey, it worked great for that, for that camp environment. Let's try it for the youth authority school. And so we got a game with them because Mr. Johnson was looking for all the good teams at this point. And then the prep league that year, Pauley and Flint Ridge and a school called Pacific Christian was in the prep league at that point. And us, we were all in the top 10. So basically our schedule was just going right down the list of the top 10, which, looking back on it, I would not have had it any other way. It was the funnest time. They were all great games. You had to play, we had to play full games. We weren't walking over anybody. You weren't ending games at halftime besides American Christian, and they kind of deserved it. Um, but they were tough, hard fought games. Um, a lot of them were like 55-45. Uh,
Oh,
very high scoring uh, games, and I can remember going into the Templeton game, which was our second game. And Templeton, of course, was number one in the division because they'd won the year before. And I remember Mr. Johnson, you don't know what you have, that early in the season. We had lost a lot of seniors. Like I said, Don Bedoya had switched to fullback. At this point, we'd put in a lot of new linemen, a lot of new players. And, we were kind of the ones taking our shot. And I remember Mr. Johnson saying, I just hope we don't get skunked in this game. Hope you guys can, hang in there and not. And I remember thinking, that's not a good goal.
yeah. That's
We
not.
don't want to do that. I can't imagine, and so to go out there and, as the game went on, Dave Guerrero making plays at quarterback. I said Don Bedoya making great plays. We had Don Aiden as a split end, was a great wide receiver split end. And our line just making plays, winning that game, winning the next game against Coast Union, going against El Paso de Robles, which was just those guys were crazy athletes, and potentially a little bit intimidating. We were kind of, we were typical senior obnoxious high school guys, so I don't know that we got that intimidated, but we probably should have been. Um, they came down and built our guard tower in the infield of field
They
one
built, I
the
feel
day
they built,
before. They built the
they built,
tower. They came and built the tower the day before the game, like sent some people down.
so
Um,
if anyone tried to escape, is that what
yeah, yeah. So they have a
oh,
lookout. They actually drove. They came from Paso Robles, way up. But they drove. They had a bus with like bars and on the windows, and they drove it onto the infield. And the coaches slash guards got out first and kind of formed, and the guys just had to walk around around the fence in onto the field. Um, and there were some great athletes, and we said we got to play them a couple times that year, but it was an amazing game, back and forth. At one point during the game, there was a breakaway run towards the entrance side, and I guess one of their players who had a broken arm but had talked the coach into letting him come down, decided to make a run for it at that point. So he runs the opposite way, runs out through the gate, ends up over in the wash. So all of a sudden during the game, there's police cars coming down the driveway with sirens on, coming down the driveway. There's a helicopter overhead shining their light over in the wash, trying to catch this this player. We're still playing the game. We ended up hanging on and winning a great game, and I don't know that they ever caught the player. I know Mr. Johnson said he talked to the coach, said that the player called his coach at El Paso, and the coach said, "Hey, don't tell me where you are. I'm gonna tell whatever you tell me, I'm gonna have to report." Um, so yeah, I mean, I know Mr. Johnson told us that if we knew what these guys had done, we wouldn't want to play them. But anyway,
yeah,
they were on
yeah,
the schedule, so we played them.
you'd be
But
more
it was a great
paranoid.
game, and they were actually a very clean team, because they wanted to keep playing. The coaches were watching them like crazy, so they weren't a dirty team. They were very clean,
Yeah.
extremely fast. We'd fake out the whole team, and I'd take off around the end, and they catch me in like 10 yards and knock me into the fence, and you get up and do it again. Um, and then they had a lot of issues on offense, fortunately, where the quarterback would make a bad pass and then they'd yell at each other, and they were
Yeah.
kind of smacking each other in the huddle, and you could hear them kind of like fighting over there. And we're like, okay, um,
So you had quite a schedule your senior year. The Coach Johnson threw at you guys, but at the time, you guys, I don't know if you breezed through it, but you went undefeated going into the postseason, and you had that one goal on your mind, and maybe some redemption against Templeton. So the schedule being thrown at you, I think Coach Johnson knew what he was doing, especially with some of his comments to you guys, and you were poised after, I'm sure, that runner-up finish, especially getting blown out, that when the playoffs came around, there was probably another switch, another gear you guys went into.
yeah, definitely. Yep. So our first playoff game is against Francis Parker,
Wow.
who who was the Southern Section invitee of the year. And we found out after the fact, after the game, Mr. Johnson told us, oh, by the way, those guys are rated #1 in the state. Um, the Cal High newsletter thought that they were going to win the game easy and that they were way better. Um, and but anyway, yeah, so we played them the first game, and played Masada in our, in the who again was another tough team. Um, got to meet El Paso de Robles again in the semifinals,
Oh.
and fortunately won the flip. So again, it was at home. Um, but yeah, we came to that game and we knew it was going to be a tough game. Um, we pulled ahead. I think we were ahead by probably 7 at halftime. We kind of bounced like 14 ahead, 7 ahead. At the very end of the third quarter, we had a fumble or something, made a mistake. They capitalized and they went ahead by 1 point. And I can remember
Wow.
looking up, and they were fired up, of course. They were yelling and screaming. They didn't have a whole lot of fans, obviously. Um, that came for the game. Um, but the momentum was all in their direction. And I remember looking up, I was back on the goal line to return the kick. And I remember thinking, this is not where this is going to end. Um, and I think we might have said it in the huddle, but just at that point, we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, this is not, it's not where it's going to happen. Um, Ended up scoring in a couple plays. Mr. Johnson called an onside kick, which we recovered, scored again in a couple plays. So the game just turned on a dime. We ended up winning the game 60-40. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I think what was the highest scoring game of the year or whatever in the CIF. And we were actually the highest scoring team, I think. I think we up to that point in history in the CIF. Basically because we had to play all the game, we had to play and keep
Yeah.
playing all the games. So we would get up to 60 or, you know, 65 points every game because the game we had to play the whole game and just keep on going. So at that point we got our rematch against Templeton. Um, we done a few things different throughout the year. I think one of the the clutch things was um, we convinced Mr. Lunny, which wasn't hard, but we convinced Mrs. Dowd, which was a lot harder. Um, in uh, the first period of the school day, period 0, you had, on Mondays you would do you'd watch film, right, from the game the week before, and you get your scouting report and things. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we had band. So somehow we convinced Mr. Lunny, like I said, which probably wasn't that hard. We convinced him, okay, we need to practice football extra because we're working on a triple option. We were working on a lot of pass stuff that you didn't get a chance necessarily to practice as much, during our regular practices. So somehow, beginning of the season, we convinced them both to let us practice on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we stuck helmets on and went out there every day and had an hour practice before school started. I think we promised Mr. Lenny we would practice, on our own with band, which I'm sure we
I'm
did a
sure.
bit.
Well, the best part of that is that Mr. Lunny, being the defensive coordinator, he's also the band director. So only at Rio
Exactly.
Hondo could this kind of thing happen, which is just
Yep.
that's a great nugget right there.
I can remember Mrs. Dowd shaking her head and saying, "This is never happening again." Because of course we were late. We all had to like get ready for school after practice, so we come rolling into the first period class 10 or 15 minutes late after. It was, I don't know how they let us do it, but I'm glad they did, and it definitely paid off. The other thing we did is before the season, Mr. Johnson was typically on the trips, um, and so he didn't have much to do with us in the summer, so we're kind of on our own. Mr. Orcampton would take us up to camp again. So when I was a senior, we decided, okay, we're going to ride our bikes to camp.
Oh,
So as a conditioning thing, so none of us, this is August, this is the middle of August. Um, I actually hadn't ridden a bike. I didn't even have a bike. I had to borrow a bike. But I'm like, we're going to do this. Suppose they'd done it, sometime in the past, back in the old days, they rode their bikes to camp. So we're like, we're going to ride our bikes to camp. So a bunch of us got bikes. Um, I borrowed a 10 speed from somebody. Unfortunately, I didn't have the lower gears, which made it really hard towards, towards the end when we were getting up on the big hills. But we show up at Rio at 7 in the morning. We had ice chests, full of Gatorade and drinks and stuff. Put them in the bus. Mr. Ork is going to drive out 10 miles ahead of us and wait, and then we're going to catch up and meet. And then he'll keep driving out. And we were supposed to kind of pretty much stay together as riding these bikes or whatever. So we get out to the first stop is up in Glendora or Upland, a little farther up on Foothill there, and we start going in the bus. And this is how the 80s were different than nowadays. But we start to go in the bus, and Mr. Ork's like, whoa, wait a second, because you can't go in the bus. We can't like stop and get drinks every time, because it'll take too long to get up to camp. Because you can get in the bus when it and get your drinks when it's lunchtime. And so we're like, what? So so we all we're all riding behind gas stations trying to find drinking fountains and spigots and stuff. Um, anyway, we made it. Of course, you end up like the really steep part right before you get to Highway 2 there. That's like the 3 o'clock.
oh,
We're right there, 3 o'clock to like 5 o'clock. You're going up there, and um, by the time we ate at some guys ate at the cafe. I think the guys riding the bus ate at the cafe. Um, I'm like, I don't need any food at this point.
yeah.
Water. And we finally made it to camp like at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, something like that. I remember riding up
Oh
in
man.
Whitewood, and Dave Guerrero and I were kind of the ones that were tasked with getting everybody up there. The bus, Mr. Ork, he just took off once we got, on Highway 2 and said, okay, you guys know where camp is now. He goes, we'll see you up there. So we had to get the guys going. I remember there was a guy that was laying on the bench in Wrightwood and like, I can't go any farther. And we're like, you don't have any choice. You have to, like picking him up, putting him on his bike, getting him up there, whatever. And we all made it up the hill. And I'm pretty sure if it wasn't the next day, I'm pretty sure the day after that we were running up to the top of the hill and running along the road up there for a mile or two, led by Dave Guerrero, who was kind of the distance one that calculated what was a
Yeah.
mile, it's 2 miles along the road, and we were like, hey, wait a second, the 2 miles this year is a lot farther than the 2 miles was last year. But again, that all paid off. We rode our bikes down from camp the next Saturday. Got home much quicker than riding up.
Oh yeah.
Got home Saturday afternoon, and double session started Monday morning. Rolled right into that, and needless to say, we were in good shape.
Yeah.
And that really paid off in in a 60-40 track meet against El Paso de Robos. I dare to say that was probably one of the the differentiating factors.
No
You
doubt.
know, as it was tied in the fourth quarter, and we pulled away with 3 touchdowns, and and won that game. But then rolled into the championship game against Templeton, and you know, had a great game. We ran we had practiced triple option, um, and never had quite gotten the perfect triple option. You look at it, you look at old triple option on TV, Oklahoma style, and they do it. It's so easy. Um, we never quite pulled one off perfectly in the game. We'd done it a lot of times, um, but in a 0-0 championship game, we're at midfield, and Guerrero fakes the ball to Bedoya up the middle, pulls it, starts going around the end, and meets the outside linebacker, has to choose now. What's he going to do? He just lights up Dave. But right before he does, Dave pitches the perfect pitch, perfect stride. I'm, down the sideline. All I see is the little safety trying to run over. And I cut back on him, and it's a touchdown. The one perfect triple option we did. So thank you, Mrs. Dowd and Mr. Lunny,
Yes.
letting us practice that all those mornings. It paid off. Um, we also ran a really good pass off of that, that we used a lot in a lot of those games. But those were kind of things that made the difference. And we won the championship game, like 35-12, something like that. And again, our coaching, we by that point we'd played Templeton. This was the third time in 14 games we'd played them, and so Mr. Lenny had the defense dialed in. We knew their tendencies. We knew what to look for, and it was just we had a great coaching plan going in, and we're able to execute it. But just had it was a great ending to would have been a
Long
lot of
journey.
work, a long journey. Yeah. Kind of working through the frustration, which is, one of the great things about football, right? I
Hmm.
mean, the perseverance, the idea that, you go out there and work as a team, and great things can happen.
Yeah, it is a journey. It's sweeter, I think, at the end, at the mountaintop. Pun intended, when you're steady climb on the bike.
Yeah.
Just that, the imagery there, just kind of the losses, the challenges, all the things that had come before that, and of course, I'm sure when you won that championship, thinking back to your days as a kid when you're watching guys do great things. I want to mention, we touched on a little bit indirectly already, but you talk about Mrs. Dowd, who was the principal of Rio Hondo for many, many years. Ironically, she would end up becoming your mother-in-law. Mr. Dowd, the great architect, I would say the architect, that was more Mr. Johnson, but the beginning of RHP football was Mr. Mike Dowd. Head coach there, and he ended up being father-in-law. So kind of a family tie in there to Rio football. And then years later, Mr. Moore, watching your son KJ play football for RHP, most notably like 09 to 11, I believe. Incredible football player. He wins a championship in 2011. Yeah, I don't know. Rio football seems like very, very special to the Moore/Dowd family.
Yeah, we do love our football. It was amazing watching KJ. I had to always take deep breaths and realize, that it was his chance, his turn.
Yeah.
Um, he needed to make his opportunities, but just really appreciate the great coaching staff and the coaches. Mark does an awesome job, Randy. Um, and back then they didn't quite have as many coaches back in 11. But no, the coaches just putting the kids in the right place to give them the opportunity, to make the plays and to do what they were able to do. Yeah, the first time I met Mr. Dowd was actually my 5th grade year up at Mount Kare, the first year I remember him anyway. he was in charge of our division, and the high school guys kind of coached us. So we're up at Mount Kare, and I remember back in the day, they would do crazy things at Mount Kare or on the trips, like they gave you grapefruit juice as a fifth grade kid. And so I remember I was towards the end of the line, and I was really excited because the grapefruit juice ran out. So I'm like, that's great, because grapefruit juice doesn't taste good.
Yeah.
It's not a great, it's not a great breakfast product. Um, so I'm thinking, I got to win here, because of course you had to drink it when you got it, right? So I got my breakfast. I'm eating breakfast. I'm all excited, and all of a sudden, this big, huge man is behind me, and I hear this voice, and he says, "Did you not get grapefruit juice?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, it was all gone. It was a bummer, but He's like, oh, okay." And so he puts down this like a big 24-ounce cup, and he gets tomato juice, and he starts pouring tomato juice into this cup, and he doesn't stop. He keeps pouring and pouring almost to the top of this cup. And he's like, okay, so that means you get to drink the tomato juice. And I'm like this fifth grader, right? And so eventually I wanted to go out and play with the rest of the kids. So I did drink the tomato juice, but I've never forgotten my first meeting with Mr. Dowd back in the day. That was the first time I remember meeting him. He was the mean guy who made me drink tomato juice, which, as it turns out, is worse than grapefruit juice. There is something worse than grapefruit juice. I never made that mistake of bypassing the grapefruit juice and thinking that I had won after that. But yeah, that was my first introduction to Mr. Dowd. And then he was around. I remember he was the one that was in charge of breaking up the fights and stuff at practices. And if anything happened like that, he was always there to back up the high school coaches. So yeah, since then it's been all uphill.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
Mr. Dowd is probably that's a great first story of a future father-in-law, and of course Mrs. Dowd, all the great work she did as a principal. What is it like? I'm going to ask you just real quick, if you could, winning a championship after everything you went through, and then watching your son win one. Is there a comparison? Does one matter more than the other? I mean, or is it pretty equal? I got to imagine it's just kind of something you enjoy sharing with your son.
Yeah, no, it is. It's definitely something we enjoy sharing. I will say it's important. It was important that that he understood what it was going to take. And I think we shared, kind of stories as he grew up, like, hey, if you want to reach this goal, it's going to take a little more than just showing up. All the teams show up, all the teams,
Mm.
you know, get the gear on and go out in the field. What are you guys going to do that's going to, push you over the top? And you're going to, the other thing is you've got to get your lives in a place where God can bless you, right? Because it's not going to work if that's not the case either. So I think it was great growing up. As a kid, you don't really care what your dad did, and you don't want to hear it. It was the old days. It was not
Yeah.
something. So we didn't spend a whole lot of time revisiting the old days per se. But it was definitely great to see him kind of rise to the challenge, put the work in, and to see his team get the job done. He had a very good group of guys that were together a long time and had a great run there in high school, including the next year, 2012, when they repeated and won it again.
Yeah, it was a special group for sure. That kind of that era really. where Rio went to 11 man. And at first it was like, well, can we do this? And then it's like, oh yeah, we can do this. And
Yeah.
just kind of as we wrap it up here, Mr. Moore, just in tying in kind of, we've talked a lot about the history of Rio football that you've gone through and how the tradition continues. What we've seen the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, since the podcast has been born, really, with Rio football, this new era, us competing at the highest level we ever have. I just like your comments on that, and then just if you could tie it into, why Rio Hondo football is special, why it means so much to alumni such as yourself, who've, it's been a while since you played, but real football still matters. So anyway, if you could tie all that into kind of your closing statement here, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I've loved watching these guys play the last 3 or 4 years, even longer really before that, um, through some of the big games they had before COVID. Um, but I mean, just to see, a lot of these guys, I know them, some of them I coach in kindergarten, um, several of them, a lot of them I know from their time in the kindergarten division. To see them kind of grow into young men. My wife is over at, the principal over at Pearl. And I see him, a lot of these kids over at Pearl. A lot of the seeds to this current senior class, I think were planted over, at Pearl. And I think there was some talk back, in their Pearl days, like, hey, we want to be one of those teams at Rio Hondo Prep that, that come through and that, make a name for ourselves and, win a championship and rise to new levels. And I think that started, back then. But no, it's been great to see. You can't beat football. I mean, where else could you take, 30 guys that are, committed, good athletes, not so good athletes, big guys, smaller guys, uh, you know, heavy, light, all, just give me 30 guys, right? And football is a sport where they can all play. They can
Yeah.
all contribute. They can all um, have a big part. Um, yeah, there's running backs out there scoring touchdowns, but they would not be scoring without the linemen, and nothing would be happening without that safety back there who is thinking, don't throw the ball, don't throw the ball, don't throw the ball, and then makes the play. Makes the play. I mean, football is the only sport where you can get such a big group of guys together as a team, and they can make such a big difference and go so far as a group. And then also just the perseverance and the resilience that you learn playing football, I think really translates into the kind of adult that you need to be, um, and that somebody wants to have as an employee. Down the road, I think football, um, the teamwork aspects really build in, and I think Rio's done such a great job, and there's no better example of camaraderie and what a group of guys can do than watching a Rio Hondo Prep football team. And that might have been true, I hope, back in our day, but it's definitely been true the last few years. And I commend the coaching staff and the players for the work they put in, and the representation that they do, because in the end it all comes down to we're in the job of inspiring kids, right? Kare Youth League, Rio Hondo Prep, Pearl Prep. Um, it's our job to inspire kids to choose God, choose Christ in their lives. And I think Rio Hondo Prep and the football team is a great example of what can happen if a group of guys do that, um, and put God first, put Christ first in their lives, and then do the work. um, and persevere. When somebody gets injured and it's looking bad, you know, that's your chance to step up. And those guys have done that so far this year. It's been a great thing to watch.
Amen to that. Can't think of a better way to wrap up this conversation. Mr. Moore, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing some memories, and I think taking us down memory lane of as far as Rio Hondo football and just the great tradition that it is. We'll see you out at a game very soon. And again, it has been a lot of fun. Once again, your guests for this week, 1982 CIF champion Scot Moore. Thank you so much, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Matt.
And a big thank you to Scot Moore for coming on the podcast. A lot of fun catching up and going down memory lane, especially some of those 1980s teams with some championship runs, some runner-up finishes. I love hearing about the old days because, again, they came before us and laid the foundation. It's just one constant cycle here at Rio Hondo Prep. Some good times indeed. Mr. Moore used to coach the Atlantic Pirates when I was a kid, him and Mr. Lee coaching against me and my Gator teammates, Mr. Shintaku, on coaching us, and some intense competitions back in the day. It's fun to look back on those, but great talking with him as a friend these days. So much love to the Moore family and, the great history, again, the connection to the Dowds and all that. So fun guest, long conversation, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Hope you did as well. Real quickly about the Bellflower Buccaneers, I wanted to talk to you guys about before sharing a quick rule reference, just to wrap things up. I'll try to keep this all very, very tight today. The Buccaneers from Bellflower, again, 3-0, as I mentioned, as I look at their record here on Max Preps, which they have some highlights as well that you guys can go to and check out. But their opening win was 27-21 over Santa Ana High School at home. Then they traveled to Oxnard, kind of a tough road trip on September 5th. They won up there 35-7, and then a home game this last Thursday against Whittier. They won that game 28-6. So all scores very similar. Santa Ana obviously gave up 3 scores there, 3 touchdowns versus just one in the other 2. So again, similar to what we saw with Marquez. Seems like a stingy defense that limits their opponents, but Rio Hondo seems to be really scoring more points each and every week. I think that's been the case. Yeah, let's see, 20, 28, 43, 49. So that steam engine of Rio is getting going here. So something's got to give. As far as the stats go, as I recorded this, there were only stats through 2 games. But just real quick, again, I wanted to list a few things here for you guys. Got a lot going on the computer today with uploads and all kinds of things going on. So with some player stats, this page isn't responding. Well, that's just perfect timing for what we're trying to do here on the podcast. But 3-0. They did have some very good, one very good receiver in particular. I believe he was number 19. I want to double check that just so that we have that for you guys. But looked like he was a freshman and was really, what was it? 2 games. I think he had 4 touchdown receptions in just 2 games as far as the stat lines went. But I'll try to look it up one more time. But this is a team, again, like I said, it looks like they can wear you down as far as just their style of offense. They're kind of balanced. I think similar to what we saw with Marquez, a team that could run the ball, a team that could also put it in the air and score rather quickly. So I think we may see some of that from Bellflower this upcoming Friday evening. I'm looking forward to being down there at their school, their turf. I know we had an away game already with Maranatha, but that was kind of close to home and just not too tough of a road trip. This one will be a little tougher. Okay, we have the page back up. It looks like 2 of their star players really are young guys. Their leading rusher is a freshman. Again, this was just one of their leading rushers is a freshman. Not many carries. Again, the stats just through 2 games. He wears number 1. That is Austin Miller. Looks to be a running back, a wide receiver for them, or he's listed on here. So maybe some gadget plays. But as far as receiving, That is their top guy, Austin Miller, number one. He had 4 touchdown catches in the first 2 games of the season, and he could also run the ball over 100 yards in the first 2 games of the season as well. So their freshman wide receiver, number one. Let's see his dimensions. I'm assuming probably a taller guy, but definitely got to keep eyes on him. Yeah, 6'4", 290 or 195. So number one is number one, right? You gotta start and finish there. Keeping an eye on Austin Miller, kind of like Marquez and number 11 this last week. So he looks to be a guy that they want to get the ball to in many different ways. And let's see, what about passing? Austin Miller's also thrown a pass as a fresh. So this dude's just extremely talented. Junior quarterback number 5. Let's see, Elishon, I'm not sure how to say it. Saxton, 6 foot, 215-pound junior quarterback, has some decent numbers as well. So this team will put it in the air probably more than we've seen. Well, no, Maranatha probably did it the most, but gotta definitely put some pressure on the quarterback, the junior quarterback Saxton. I kind of like that. Your quarterback's name is Saxton, Sack a ton. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just saying, guys. Sometimes you look at these things and it's something fun comes up. So let's make that a goal. Rio defense, get to the quarterback, get to Saxton, and sack him a ton. We have to recorded 3 sacks this last Friday night. So let's add to that total, and 2 interceptions. That was rather cool to see the Rio defense making plays there. Okay, now that that's out of the way, again, short portion of it today since our interview went a little long. I wanted to share something with you guys, a play that occurred on Friday night. I like my explanation point to be somewhat relevant to you guys if I can do so. And I love painting a picture, but sometimes I'd rather see that said picture on the screen here. So what I'm going to do, if I can figure this out, is my share option here. There we go. Share my screen. Okay. So, as I typically do on the explanation point, or I have been recently, I've been wanting to show you plays or kind of explain something that happened in our game, and then kind of give you guys, move me down here, give you guys a little bit of just context. So, I want to talk about momentum today. Momentum is not just something that you see in a game between the 2 teams. Momentum is specifically in the rule book for 2 cases: a change of possession or kick plays, which is also a change of possession if you think about it. So what I want to talk about here is the interception by Landon Scott. And the video may not be that great, but again, try to visualize this. When there is a change of possession and the goal line is involved, there is a play, a rule referred to as momentum. And the 5-yard line is kind of the bridge too far, if you will. If you are going towards your own goal line, meaning the goal line that you're defending, and you possess the football, you are entitled with your natural momentum. Say you intercept the ball at the 4-yard line, and your momentum takes you into the end zone and you fall down. Well, rather than that be a cheap safety, momentum, once you possessed it, and in the official's judgment, your natural momentum took you that direction, the ball would come out to the 4-yard line. Now, if you intercepted the ball at, say, the 6-yard line and stumbled backwards into the end zone and went down, well, now we have a safety. You lose momentum. And I want to give you the example of Landon Scott here. This happened at like the 15 and the 12-yard line, I think, but it'll give you an idea of what I mean. Sometimes you need to see it to get an understanding here. So the ball is tipped, batted around, and Landon's running towards his own goal line. So I want you guys to imagine, just for the sake of argument, imagine that the goal line, or excuse me, the 10-yard line here is the goal line. And if you look, try to run it slow for you here. Landon, he initially gains possession at the 13, maybe the 2-yard line, and then his momentum takes him into the end zone. Now, again, for sake of argument, we are imagining that the 10-yard line is the goal line, just to give you guys an idea here. This can happen in kick plays also, but here comes the play. Great second down interception. The ball is thrown. Scott tips it. He's running backwards. He finally recovers it. His momentum is taking him backwards, right? If, again, it's when it's possessed, not when it's touched. If the ball is possessed inside the 5 or inside, and then you run into the end zone, because of your momentum, you get protection back out. Now, if your momentum takes you into the end zone, then you run out of the end zone. Well, now all bets are off on where you end up getting tackled. But tip, he runs, for the sake of argument, into the end zone. If that were the end zone, on an interception or a fumble, by the way, it's not an automatic touchback like we see in the kicking game. So, again, we would see this on a kickoff or a punt or something too. If a guy is like chasing the ball and maybe he gets lost on it and the ball gets possessed and his momentum takes him backwards before he can recover, ball's coming out. He can bring it out of the he can bring it out of the end zone in that case, but momentum is where you possess it. And again, if it's at the say we treated the goal line here, the actual goal line, and for some reason Landon was stumbling, he was tip, finally got it right there at the 10 and took it into the end zone. Well, you don't get momentum in that situation. So momentum happens on kick plays, or you see it a lot on interceptions, change of possession like this, where you're like, when will that ever happen? Well, here's a scenario where it kind of happened if it was a little closer to the goal line. So that is just a rule in the book there to protect the defense or the kick returners from a cheap safety, because it's tough. You're trying to recover a loose ball, and once you secure it, just because you're naturally running backwards doesn't mean you're in jeopardy of a safety, as long as it is the 5-yard line and in. I hope that made sense to you guys on the explanation point of the Charge to Keep podcast. To wrap things up, I'll try to come up with more things like this that I see in the games, maybe an officiating ruling or whatever, just to kind of keep us on our toes and keep the momentum flowing in the right direction, if you know what I mean. All right, guys, that'll do it for today's pregame show. We'll see you Friday night at Bellflower High School. I've never been there before, so I'm not sure the parking and this and that. It looks like natural turf out there, or artificial turf, but fun stadium. And let's get the real faithful going. Get them out there early and show them what Rio Hondo Prep football is about. I think we're in for a tough game. All the games going forward now should have their own tests ahead, and I think the boys are poised to continue to improve and to keep this charge going. Keep that charge going on the Charge to Keep podcast. Thank you, Mr. Moore. That was a pleasure chatting with you, and to everyone else out there. We'll see you Friday, and if you can't make it, I'll be sure to tune in on the NFHS network. And again, another postgame show on the weekend to recap all the action from Week 4. Someone's must go. Rio Hondo 4-0 at Bellflower 3-0. Should be a fun one. We'll see you then. But until then, guys, as always, your friendly reminder to be humble in victory and gracious in defeat, because we always have a charge to keep.
A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fit it for the sky. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give.